Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jill Batrous, and I'm going to be talking to you about childhood obesity, bad habit, or child neglect. We're going to talk about a case in 2010 that the American Medical Association for Journal and Ethics and Dr. Varnes followed. It was a 9-year-old little girl with 150 in the 150th percentile of her weight. Her BMI was 35. She was diagnosed with hyperlipidemia and impaired fasting glucose. At that time, she was referred to a pediatric obesity clinic. The CDC recognizes normal BMIs as 18.5 to 24.9. The doctors had ordered her to attend classes, made recommended changes to her diet and physical activity to the mother, but the mother was not having it. She did not want to either admit that her child had a problem or she just didn't care. She stated that it's her child and she's not going to make any changes. She's going to go along with what she's doing. Unfortunately, there was nothing else written about that story, so we're not sure where that case wound up. Hopefully the child lost weight. Dr. James, chairman of the International Obesity Task Force, in 2006 stated that the Western world food industries, without even realizing it, has precipitated a pandemic when it comes to childhood obesity, and it has enormous health consequences. So it's not just a local issue. Charging parents with child neglect sounds harsh, but for their childhood obesity, it's become an important debate among child welfare and doctors. Today I'm going to be informing you regarding childhood obesity, its long-term effects on the child, and the issues that arise from childhood obesity with regards to child neglect. Should parents be charged? Next, then we'll delve into solutions to the problem at hand and finish up discussing why parents should be held responsible and some steps that everyone can take to help with the decline as well. First, it's important to know the prevalence of childhood obesity and the effects it has on the child's life as well as their adult life. What is child neglect? Well, according to the Child Welfare Information Gateway and the state statute in 2019, it was defined as both criminal and civil. It's any recent or act or failure to act on a part of a parent or a caregiver that results in death, physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse, exploitation, or an act or failure to act that presents an imminent serious harm to the child. Child obesity, we look to the who's who. The World Health Organization, it states that child obesity is an abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that presents in risk or a risk to the health. That was in 2020. It's believed that it is difficult to use one actual way to measure childhood obesity because of the continuous evolution in the way that the body actually grows. Childhood obesity has doubled over the last 30 years, and Hispanic girls and African American boys have increased significantly over the years. Children ages 2 through 19 that have a BMI greater than or equal to 120% went from 3.8 to 5.9 in the year between 1999 and 2000. But in 2009 to 2010, it doubled with equal over 140% BMIs, 0.9 to 2.1% in children in the same age group. So why is it increasing? Well, gap in knowledge, an imbalance in consumed energy and energy burned. So what does that mean? That means that foods consumed by our children today are higher in calories. Schools have reduced their activities and time spent outside for their children, and their physical educations have basically halved in the time. High school students don't even take PE. They take an online class or like a 3-4 month course. Most of it's not outside. Healthier foods are more expensive than high-calorie foods, and children are less likely to partake in sports activities due to living in low-income housing or neighborhoods or high-crime areas. So mental problems associated with childhood obesity, it's important. Obesity children are more likely to experience low self-esteem and build bullying, which results in negative self-images of themselves. Due to this negative self-image and the bullying, they have negative self-worth. So there are higher incidents of childhood suicide. And according to the Science Daily in 2009, the Center of Advanced Healing stated our youth feel more pressured today to fit in and fit to a certain image of beauty. So who's ultimately responsible? The parents, their caretakers. Parents are the primary caretakers of children until the age of 18, and they should be accountable for the health and overall well-being of their children. So what's the question? Should parents be charged with these crimes, the crime of child neglect, if their child is being forced to eat and maintain unhealthy lifestyles, which are resulting in their obesity and their health issues? Absolutely, of course they should be. And who can you report neglect to if you suspect it? Well, the schools, the physicians, any medical professional, a psychologist, and concerned citizen. If you have a neighbor, you could report that if you have a concern for that child. How do you report it? Well, you can report it to the Department of Children and Families in your local area or your local law enforcement area. The DCF will do their own investigation if you report it to them, and they'll deem if they need to go to the police or not, or if they can just implement programs for you to follow. If you want to report it to the police, you can go directly to the police. They, in turn, are required by law to report it to DCF, but they will make a decision whether they make arrest on the charges or not, and they will check with the state attorney's office once an arrest has been made, and a decision will be made by the prosecutor if charges will actually be filed. So we're going to talk about an extreme case, a case study of this little girl named Christina from California. She was a 13-year-old little girl back in 1997. She passed away of congestive heart failure due to her excessive weight. So her story starts off, she was normal birth weight at 7 pounds 11 ounces, but she was put on her first diet by the age of 2, and her weight was off the charts by the age of 3. After that, nothing was done. She didn't see, at the time of her death, she hadn't seen a doctor in 5 years. She hadn't been to school in a year. And when she was found dead, she had feces in her fold of her skin, and she had hundreds of bed sores around her body. She was naked in her family room floor, covered up with just a sheet. Her mother was ultimately arrested for a felony child abuse charge. However, all the felony charges got dropped, and she was only convicted of passive misconduct, which is a misdemeanor abuse. She didn't even serve any jail time. So who failed Christina? Well, everybody did. Her neighbors, her school, her mother, everybody. Her physicians never reported she wasn't going to annual visits. Her school never reported she wasn't going to school. Her mother was allowed to just get away with feeding her child whatever and allowing her to continue to get even morbidly obese than was originally expected. Her friends and family, nobody, her neighbors, nobody spoke up for Christina. And she passed away. So healthy heart matters. Just as it affects an adult heart, it affects a pediatric heart or a child's heart. So according to the Cleveland Clinic, it's now recommended that children ages 9 to 11 have their cholesterol checked every year. And also by the age of 3 and on, you're having your blood pressure checked. So at some point, responsibility needs to be placed on a parent for these children in one way, shape, or form. How do we do that? Well, state and federal laws need to be mandated. Parents need to be forced to participate under court-guided health treatments and programs in regards to children's obesity. So what are 3 steps we can use to mandate parent compliance? Well, step 1, when it's revealed that the child's obese, the first and foremost thing needs to be you need to be reported to the appropriate personnel, which we discussed earlier, either your local DCF or your law enforcement agency. Step 2, once it's reported, you want to make sure that you monitor even more like early symptoms and signs of any other health issues. Medical professionals can be firsthand, hey, your child's weight's increasing, we need to watch this a little closer. Hospital visits, they can notice if there's an issue. Schools can notice if their children are not participating in activities they normally would participate, if they're more alone, or if they're showing issues like lack of grades and lack of attendance to school. And all programs need to be ordered by the court and mandated by them as well, followed. And step 3, once those classes are ordered by the court, what's next? Well, the families need to be followed for at least a year. If it's passed and your child's showing positive signs, follow them once a month for 6 months, and then go from 6 months to a year, as long as they're following the guidelines ordered by the court. If they're not passed, or if they fail to take the classes or don't want to participate, well then at that time, the order by the court needs to be the child's removal from the home, and the child can be placed in an alternate family member's home or foster care. Worst case scenario is Christina's case. The child dies. Well, what if the child dies during a program and the parents are doing everything they can, but the child still dies? Well, they need to be charged with child neglect, because it's the events that precipitated that death that caused the ultimate passing of their child. How can the government help? As earlier described, they can make court-mandated cases, but alternate state and federal taxes can also be applied to dietary choices. Soft drinks and high-calorie foods, no more dollar menus that have unhealthy foods. Your dollar menus need to be your healthy foods. Restaurants and facilities need to have healthy food choices, and they need to be equally priced to the unhealthy ones. And also mandated healthy meals need to be at every single school. Also, schools can be required to implement physical education again. The requirements in order to advance to the next grade. So if they don't want to participate, they just don't go on. Every child should be required to participate in a government-funded athletic program to their liking. A lot of kids don't participate in athletic programs because they don't have the money. Their families live in have poor incomes, and they live in poverty, so they can't. So it needs to be free and offered to everyone. Who holds the ultimate solution? Again, the parents. We all do. Educate the kids. Make healthy choices. Participate in healthy things like walks with your family. Restrict your kids' gaming time and television time. Sedentary choices should have limits. It will take an army to fight the disease and ultimately defeat childhood obesity, and it's important that everyone makes a conscious effort to do so. The health of our youth and future of our country depends on it. It will result in better health choices for better overall health for our children now and for them in the future as an adult. And also, there will be a decline in childhood depression, oppression, and the children will be less likely to move towards drugs and alcohols late in adolescence and childhood. Sitting back will increase that. Children will die younger. And there will be no one to blame but the country. And 3 steps the public can help. Be informed, educate yourself. Obesity and long-term effects of obesity on children. Contact your local schools, and legislature. Find out what preventions are already in place and find out if, they're even being implemented. A lot of programs are out there, they're not even being facilitated. Educate their youth early, implement early health classes and programs in elementary school. So today we have gone over information regarding childhood obesity, the long-term effects on the child, and whether the parent should be charged with child neglect. We've also discussed a few solutions and issues and case studies and steps that everyone can take to help with the pandemic of childhood obesity. And we finished up with discussing parents and caretakers and how they should be held responsible ultimately for their childhood's obesity. As previously mentioned, charging parents with neglect for their child's obesity may be the one way parents can take action in their child's health. And whether it's bad habits or child neglect, the fact of the matter is action is needed. No action and sitting at the wayside will only result in further increase in child obesity, childhood deaths related to obesity, and increased medical costs in upcoming adults for the country. The sources I used were American Medical Association Journal of Ethics. I also used the Pediatric Obesity Immunization and Child Abuse from the Journal of Nurses. I used the journal from the Prevalence of Obesity Among Young Adults and the Center for Advanced Healing, teens who think they're overweight and more likely to try suicide. And there was 2 more. Obese girl's mother found guilty of misdemeanor. It was the Los Angeles Times. Welfare Information Gateway, and also you can look into the childhood obesity and medical neglect in pediatrics, written by Varnes. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.